Maybe it's a classic or maybe a flop. Has Katie seen it? She probably has not. She'll sit down and watch it if it's good or it's bad.
Hey, have you seen this?
No, Katie hasn't seen that.
Hi, I'm Katie, and if I had a nickel for every time someone said to me, wait, you haven't seen this movie? Oh my God, you need to see this movie, I'd be very rich. So this is my podcast where I finally watch those movies you all have told me I need to see, and I tell you what I think. All right, welcome back to another episode of Katie Hasn't Seen That. We are on episode 7, I believe, of season 3. Before I forget, jump in on Ko-fi. If you become a member of the Popcorn Posse, you get early access to episodes. You get special behind the scene notes, as well as there's like a little book that Gothic got me where I can write my thoughts and reviews and things on the movies that I watched for Katie Hasn't Seen That. So you get a little sneak peek with that as well. So jump over to Ko-fi, subscribe over there, and it helps support me and the podcast. So before that, also you can watch these on YouTube. If you're listening, I made a phone hand, so you could have seen my phone hand if you were watching this on YouTube. So if you want to watch the podcast and the recording of it, it's over on YouTube, so go check those out. There's video versions. And before we dive in, sometimes you feel like a spoiler, and sometimes you don't. Today, I'm watching Mission Impossible from 1996. When this film came out, I remember it being huge. I was too young. I was in my Lion King era at this point. I was not in Mission Impossible age appropriateness era yet. I do remember this movie though. It was a huge film. I know Tom Cruise is in it. I think it's a spy film. I know the song, da, 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 that one. And I know it's been spoofed in a bunch of films. I want to say Austin Powers. However, I have not seen a full Austin Powers film, so I don't think that I can really speak on that. Is that a film I need to watch? Do I need to watch Austin Powers? Or is that not one to add to the list? Sound off. Let me know. I have seen, how many Mission Impossible films are there? I think there's a lot. I've seen one of them. I don't remember which one. I think it was MI3 or it was Ghost Protocol. It may have been, no, I don't know. I think it was Mission Impossible 3. I went with kids from a youth group I was in high school. I had no context. I don't even remember the film, but I've never seen the original. So I'm going to watch it today. But what do I think this adventure? Oh, no, it's an action thriller, not adventure. Isn't action and adventure the kind of the same thing? I'm sorry, like, where do we draw the line? I guess adventure doesn't always have to include action, so I digress. This is an action thriller. It's 150 minutes long, almost at that 2-hour mark, and you know how I feel about that. I think this film is about a man who is a spy, and he's sent on a mission that's impossible. Hey, nailed it. What do I actually think this film is about? Tom Cruise is obviously the lead. I think he's going to run a lot in this film because he likes to run in the movies he's in. This is from 1996, kind of like Tom Cruise heyday. I think he's going to be a very elite spy sent on a mission. For some reason, I'm thinking Jules. I feel like maybe he's not a spy. Maybe he's just like a criminal. Okay, this is what I think it is. Tom Cruise is a criminal in this film who's trying to steal some really fancy gems. And I think there's something with face masks because I do remember from the third film, they all kind of looked like Tom Cruise and then they'd pull off like a jelly mask. And I'm like, I'm sorry. There is no mask in this world that could make you actually look body type, teeth, eyes, all like Tom Cruise. But you know what? It's a movie. I'll let it slide. So yeah, I guess I think maybe it's a jewelry heist film. I'm not a big heist person. So we'll see if this heist thing ends up working for me. If it's a heist thing, it's probably not. That's what I think Mission Impossible's about. Obviously, I don't know. That's why I'm watching this film, and that's why I haven't seen it. Let's talk budget, though. I literally dropped my mouth on the floor when I found out the budget for this film was $80 million. Like, so I get my notes together before I start recording, and my jaw just dropped. I was like, hey, Joe, just a chill 80 million. And then box office worldwide, it grossed $457 million. 690,391. I added the dollars in there way too early, but $457 million worldwide. almost 458 million. That is an astronomical amount of money. Makes sense that they've made 6 of 7. They're making 7? Wait, sorry, I got it. You know how I pull up my stuff, right? Over here, we got one from 96, 2000, 2006, 2011, 2015, 2018, 2023, and there's one planned for 2025. I didn't know there was one that came out last year. Wait, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. When did that come out? I'm clearly not up on my Mission Impossibles, so I'm watching that today. Let's talk reviews. Let's talk numbers. Internet Movie Database has this as a 7.2 out of 10. That's not too bad. However, mouth dropped on the floor again when I started going down the list. 66% on Rotten Tomatoes. That seems kind of low. I thought that was interesting because I feel like Mission Impossible is a big film. 59% on Metacritic. Not looking so hot. That was a little surprising to me as well. And then 83% of Google users like this film. So not the 86 as per usual, 83. I'm not really sure what I'm getting into. I don't know how many people are going to be wearing Tom Cruise's face. And that is going to be something I will track in this film. So I guess without further ado, I'm going to go watch Mission Impossible and I'm going to let you all know what I think. All right, I'm back. I watched Mission Impossible, so let's just dive on in. And I always start with the Rotten Tomatoes description of the film, just so we all start off on the same page. And it's just easier than me explaining the movie myself sometimes. So here it is. When U.S. government operative Ethan Hunt and his mentor, Jim Phelps, go on a covert assignment that takes a disastrous turn, Jim is killed, and Ethan becomes the prime murder suspect. Now a fugitive, Hunt recruits brilliant hacker Luther Stickle and maverick pilot Franz Krieger to help him sneak into a heavily guarded CIA building to retrieve a confidential computer file that will prove his innocence. All right, Mission Impossible. I took a lot of notes, so I'm just going to start. Emilio Estevez is in this. I wrote in my notes, Emilio Estevez? Didn't know he was in this film. Little did I know it was going to be a short-lived appearance. So first thing I noticed about this movie was like, oh, wow, there's faces I recognize. There's a lot of famous people in Mission Impossible. There's like Kristen Scott Thomas. I didn't know John Voight was in this film. There's Emilio Estevez, like I said. Jean Reno, the guy who plays Krieger, is also a very famous face. Ving Rhames, Vanessa Redgrave. There's just a lot of faces. You go, oh, they're a famous person. I guess I didn't realize how many famous people there were in Mission Impossible. So we start off the film. We're meeting all the characters. They're starting off the movie with this mission that they're on. So you're kind of getting thrown into the chaos. Tom Cruise is clearly in makeup. And I was like, he's got to be dying in that makeup. It looked hot. It looked heavy. At first you're like, is that Tom Cruise? But you ever seen Tropic Thunder? It kind of gave me that vibe of Tom Cruise's character from Tropic Thunder, which is why I think I was able to notice it. But in this thing, they're orchestrating things from behind the scenes, trying to extract information from this person. And they go in, this like cocktail waitress brings in a poisoned shot and then a shot that Tom Cruise's character is supposed to take, but he like throws on the floor. And I'm like, it was the most obvious throwing of a shot on the floor I've ever seen. I'm like, there's no way that other person who's taking the shot that's poisoned in their peripherals did not see him throw that on the ground. Didn't matter though, that guy died. There is a lot of special effects makeup in these films, specifically in regards to Tom Cruise wearing masks or characters wearing masks. So Tom Cruise like pulls off the mask, and I didn't realize that was a common thing in these films, but I've been told the mask theme kind of goes through all of the Mission Impossible movies, and this is our first taste of it. I feel like it felt like a TV show. They revive the lady in the bed because someone's just like passed out in the bed. It seems like they gave her a drug or something to make her appear dead. They're reviving her. And then like Ethan, so Tom Cruise's character and this lady are having a moment. It seems very much like they are vibing. Her name was Claire in the film. And she's also the wife of Jim Phelps, Ethan's mentor. So there's some complicated things there where at first I'm like, oh, they're setting up a romance. And then later in like the few scenes later, we're like, oh, that's his mentor's wife. And there's a vibe there. So that's how they start this film. And then they literally do an intro that feels like I'm starting an episode of CSI on Miami. They're just like showing shots from the film, just like bam, 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 like just kind of jarring, very much like a TV show that you'd watch nowadays that has rapid shots of things that happened throughout the season. I'm watching Gilmore Girls for the first time. The intro felt very much like that, just like clips from the movie I'm about to watch. And it was just an odd thing. And I can't remember if this movie's from 1996. I can't remember if films did this. I feel like James Bond does this. No, they don't. James Bond does like the shooting at the camera with like the blood dripping down. I don't know. It was an interesting choice to open the film this way. Granted, I know Mission Impossible is based on a TV series. So maybe that they were just going for that vibe. It just was interesting because I was watching some stabbings and things like come up very much later on in the film. And I'm like, are they just like giving away the plot right now? Granted, you don't know why those things are happening. It was just interesting. I found out in this intro sequence that Danny Elfman did the music, which I had some thoughts on as well, which I'll talk about a little bit later. I do feel like they should have put an epilepsy warning on the intro, though. It was really bright flashing lights and stuff. And I'm like, we got them on video games. We might need to slap it onto Mission Impossible's intro. We just start this film right out the gate. Jon Voight is Jim Phelps sitting on a plane. And it felt very much like a video game because like the flight attendant comes over and is like, would you like to watch a film? And he's like, nah, I'm good. And he's like, what about a film from Prague? And he's like, okay, because it's like spy talk. And like you realize quickly that he's getting like footage and confidential information he can watch. And then it burns. And so he's like lighting a cigarette to mask the film burning. And he gets this new mission. So it felt very much like a video game, which I heard there was a video game for this movie that came out that was terrible. I never played it, but I kind of want to look up YouTube playthroughs of it just to see if it is as bad as I've heard it is. And if you've played the Mission Impossible video game, how does it stack against the movie? We meet the group. They are all together on this Prague mission. It's like a secret, I don't know, secret spy group. There's a hacker. There's people who have like just different roles like you would expect in a secret spy group. And there's the leader who is Jim. Ethan's like the cocky, like, hey, I'm the smart guy. I don't know. It just felt very much like a shtick a bit, meeting all these characters. They're on this mission in Prague. They're trying to find something called a knock list. So the knock list is technically a list of covert operatives of the Impossible Missions Force, and it shows their code names and their real names. So they're trying to get the other names to essentially decode the code names. The whole movie is based around this knock list, and that's why they're in Prague. They're trying to get information for this knock list, and we start the film meeting all these characters, and then they're going to carry out this mission. As I'm watching this film, it feels like a spy joke film that I've watched. Like, did anyone watch I Spy with Eddie Murphy and Owen Wilson? Like, there's just certain movies this reminded me of, but there was never like a punchline. Johnny English, like I grew up with those films. They're not like great films, but they're kind of satire and making fun of the spy film genre. So the whole time I'm watching this, I'm like waiting for the other shoe to drop and have it be like a comedy, but it never did that. And I think I prefer the spy joke films over like the serious spy films, but I could see where those films were drawing from and how they executed it. And I think it made me appreciate the comedy spy films a little bit more. They're doing all this spy stuff, but there's not really much talk in regards to the fact that they've got the gadgets and they're going to try to hack and plot things. And it's also crazy how old the technology looks. That's not surprising. The film's from 1996, but they don't linger as much on the technology. Like there's gum that Emilio Estevez's character gives to Ethan where you like rub it together and it explodes. which is interesting. And I have a lot of questions as to why it was gum, but it doesn't really matter. It has one function, but they don't take a lot of time to like linger on the technology or the spy technology as much as I felt like they did in movies such as I Spy or Johnny English. I can't remember. Is Austin Powers a spy? Yeah, International Man of Mystery. Is he a spy? I've never seen Austin Powers. I don't know that it would have aged well, but like, I guess I don't know. Does that fall under the spy genre? That's just a tangent, but it's an actual question. So they're at this party trying to gather information for this knock list thing. But I gotta say, they're in there and they're acting so suspicious. One of them's wearing sunglasses and glaring around the room. Tom Cruise is in a face mask trying to pretend to be somebody else. There's a reason why there's a lot of other people like looking at them. And I'm like, wow, they're being super obvious right now. Are they the worst spies in the world? And I know like the whole plot of the film, it's Mission Impossible. Technically, the missions they're on are not supposed to be possible, but you know, they're going to do this and they're going to figure it out. But in this opening sequence, I'm like questioning their abilities as spies because of the attention that they're drawing on themselves. It just felt really clunky. There's a lot of times they're doing things in this film that just feel like in my peripheral vision, I would have noticed them doing and been like, did you see her with the pen? She's put something in my coffee. Like there's just things throughout the film that make me go, the missions are still impossible because I think you would have gotten caught. I know when you're watching films like this, though, you're supposed to have a level of like, I don't know, it's imagination and just allowing yourself to get lost in the film. But I found myself being hyper aware of these things and kind of questioning their spy capabilities. Am I the only one who thought that? Especially as we're going through this first mission and everything goes awry. We have Emilio Estevez, which I should probably know his character's name, but I don't remember it because he died so soon in the film. He died by what looked like an elevator wrench. He's in the elevator shaft, like doing hacking things. He's trying to make sure things run smoothly. He's doing his best, but something goes wrong and then he gets crushed. He doesn't get crushed. He gets like impaled essentially by something sticking out of the roof of the elevator shaft. Not good. Can't remember his character's name off the top of my head because he died so quickly in the film. I was excited for him though. I historically am very rooting for hacker characters. They took one out too soon for me to get too attached. I audibly gasped when the ceiling wrench hit his head. You can tell, oh gosh, they're being ambushed, but they weren't very good at being inconspicuous. So can we be surprised? Yes, the missions are impossible, but then this team is just taken out like what seems like a murder spree. Jim gets shot and falls off a bridge. Cars are exploding that the other teammate operatives are in. Someone's getting stabbed in an alleyway. There's just everyone's dropping like flies, falling off bridges, getting elevator wrenched. So Ethan is what seems like the last survivor, running back, trying to get through this horrific thing, watching all of his friends and comrades die. They're going to need a whole new cast after this sequence. But Ethan gets back and he kind of touches base with what I believe is another Mission Impossible head honcho of some kind. Also, though I will say, so one of his companions gets stabbed and then he goes and finds her and then puts his little fingies all over the knife that stabbed her. I'm like, well, his fingerprints all over that now. And then there's boat cops. I'm like, there's no way the boat cops didn't see him. So you can tell like he's in trouble. He's trying to figure out like where's safe. His entire team got wiped out. Cut to he's at like a coffee shop type place or a restaurant with this other person. He's like, everybody's taken out. And legitimately, you can get a weird vibe off of this other character. And they're like, we have this plan for you. We're going to try to get you out of here. It was just, you just start to wonder if there's something off here. And then as we go through it, you realize they're looking for a mole, like someone set them up because Ethan's like, this doesn't feel right. This is wrong. This feels like we were led into a trap. Then they start acting like Ethan's the mole and he's the problem. So he takes his gum and blows up the window and blows up a fish tank and then runs out. And now essentially Ethan's on the run. He is definitely not feeling confident that he's got anybody on his side. He gets back to, I think, what was like the hideout for the spies, which seems like a bold move. You would think that the regular Mission Impossible people would know where that hideout was, but he conducted a lot of business out of that area. And I believe there's a Bible verse, Job 3:14, that gets mentioned, or Job 3:14. And once Ethan hears that, he's like sitting in the safe house, like trying to figure out what's going on. And he sees a Bible and he figures out it must be Job 3:14. So he's like searching on the computer in this database, which I'm also like, wouldn't the Mission Impossible people who are looking for this guy see him using the database? Granted, 1996 tech is probably not the same as today, but he's crunching information in there and he's searching everything. It felt a lot like we were there for it because the sequence took so long to watch. It really felt like we were sitting next to him, like we scooted up in our little wheelie chair and we got to watch him enter everything into that computer and hit enter and not get the results he wanted until he did. It was a painstaking process that felt like it could have been maybe, 5 minutes shorter, but they chose to not do that. And then he's entering like the email. And so I'm sorry, how does the email system work in the Mission Impossible system? Because it was like, oh God, I don't even know. He was essentially like typing things and then doing @Job 3:14, like that's a real email address, or that would even work properly. However, I'm not in the spy circuit. Maybe this is how it works. Maybe this is what the dark web's like. It just felt, this process was a little bit far-fetched for me, but I guess good for him figuring out that this was the way to contact this person. There was just a lack of believability for me, and I think you have to have a suspension of disbelief in a way just to go, okay, it's a spy film. We're going to let Ethan have this because there's no way that this is how anything works. He had put like broken glass around the outside of the door of this place. So he heard glass crunching, and John Voight survived the bridge fall and then whatever else happened to him. But no, Ethan got real tired. He fell asleep. It was a dream. And then the girl he was vibing with at the beginning of the film, Claire, is now there and her husband is dead. So interesting plot twist how they were vibing and now all of a sudden she's back and seems like the husband's out of the way. She survived the car explosion, which I don't really understand how, and neither did Ethan. So he's yelling at her. This is a moment where I realized I can't really take this film seriously for some reason. He just seemed like, I mean, I know a lot has happened to him in a short amount of time, but I did not connect with. He just felt very like, he's just hanging here and just feels weird and uncomfortable. And just in general, I know he went through a lot, but I just didn't really feel a lot for him. I didn't feel a lot of empathy for Ethan. And I was like, well, maybe that's something wrong with me as a person, but I think in a way it's because the film didn't do enough to build up enough of a connection with the character for me to feel something for him. He's freaking out. I can give him that. A lot has just transpired, but this is one of his compatriots who he granted did think blew up, but she's here and she's kind of hot. So maybe it'll work out. That's how it feels in these films sometimes. I wrote in my notes, wow, the email worked. I hate when it feels really fake, but then I feel like I lose interest, which is very true. When things that just, I can only suspend my disbelief so far in a film before I just start to feel like you see all the cracks in it. And it also made me reminisce about like, oh man, I wish I could get lost in a film and just go for the ride and the roller coaster of it all. And I really do feel like I haven't had that in a while, where you just kind of get lost in it. There's been a few films, but when you watch a film like this, I think you need that like whimsy and you need that just release of like, yeah, I'm just gonna like buckle up, eat my popcorn, and just not care about the details, not care about, well, is this real or not? And I noticed, like, when I was watching this, I was like, oh, I noticed that feels really fake to me. So then every little bit of it just kind of, the wheels, the wrenches, the elevator wrenches just kept falling off as I went through this film. This may be a spoiler, but you still don't know what I gave this movie as a rating. So stay with me, okay? I gotta say, this Max character that they were saying is tied to this Job 3:14 was really easy to get a hold of, at least when Ethan was on the case. This is also where I wrote, I didn't really care about Ethan Hunt. This film feels goofy, and how are there 7 of them? I think at this point, we're about a third of the way through the movie, and now we're trying to settle in and see Ethan is trying to figure out who the mole is to vindicate himself, to save himself. All right, I can get behind it. He hires some people To be like, we got to get into the CIA to get the rest of this list so I can prove that I'm not the person. Also, Ethan somehow meets up with this Max character we find out is this like secrety kind of lady who's like, wow, her name's Maxine. It's like, it's just trying, is her name Maxine? I don't remember. All I know is her name's Max in the film. Ethan was able to get to her really easy, which makes me go, man, really, it's a benefit to have Ethan on your team because he could figure some stuff out that I'm pretty sure no one in the world could because Mission Impossible. Ethan should really be the CEO of Mission Impossible at this point. After all of this, Ethan's trying to find the real knock list, trying to vindicate himself, hires 2 guys to help him. Claire's helping now too. He's kind of like gotten okay with Claire and Claire's in on it. And part of this, like, we got to vindicate, we got to figure out what's going on. This is, as I said, the wheels are coming off. I was just so disinterested in this film at this point. I had a good run so far for season 3 if Katie hasn't seen that. I just felt like this film was so lackluster. I always try to find things that I really enjoyed about it. I'm not done talking about it, but I guess this is in my notes where everything started to devolve. The SFX was cool. Like those masks, they looked pretty real. I feel like they did a great job with the visual effects and things like that. I did enjoy aspects of this film. But I don't know that I can talk about this film fully and give you a review while like leaving you all like, what did Katie think? This film was something. I was not interested in Ethan. I don't know why, but he's not very likable. Didn't like him. I just didn't. I was thinking about like, do I just not like heist spy type films? And I realized the only heist films I actually enjoy are Guy Ritchie films, which I know some people might in the comments be like, oh, okay. I'm sorry, Snatch is a great film. I was like, does this mean that I'm just not into spy films? But then I'm like, I enjoy like the jokey, funny ones. So Ethan's describing the plan on the train to these 2 new characters that we're meeting. It's Ving Rhames and Jean Reno's characters, so Krieger and Luther. And I think they're ex-MIA operatives who it seemed like almost dishonorably not a part of the team anymore. So he kind of gets them involved and he's describing what they're going to do. They're breaking into the CIA, by the way. That's hard to say. CIA, by the way. It's like Shelley sells, you know what I'm trying to say. Shelley sells seashells by the seashore. My gosh. So Ethan's describing what they're going to do to break into the CIA. Seems like this is going to be the biggest part of the film. I'm like trying to get into it. They're trying to get the real knock list from the CIA. I feel like I'm an intelligent person, but this film felt like it was just filled with jargon to make it seem smarter than it was. Essentially, the whole film is them getting this knock list to decode code names. It felt like the film did that thing like 24, the TV show did. It just felt like a film that tried to be smarter than it was by just throwing terms into it to be like, see, spy stuff and like, political intrigue. It felt a little bit like it needed to have some clarity. And I don't think it would have taken away from its intellectual value if it had that. So I get it. It's a mission that's impossible. That checks out. But this stuff is just so unbelievable and that it's actually impossible. And without perfect conditions, none of this could be done. But I guess that's the point. I don't know why it was so hard for me to give into that. I was like, yes, Mission Impossible, but it's not. I don't know if I just pay attention to more things, but do people really not notice someone squirting their pen juice into their cup of coffee? Like if you got somebody sitting next to you, beautiful woman, and she's got her pen and she just squirting juice, liquidy stuff into your cup of coffee, you're not going to notice that? I'm sorry. I know some of it's probably camera angles, trying to make sure you get the shot and you see what's happening. But who knows? Maybe I wouldn't notice because I'm no spy. So that's happening. So Claire's in there doing that to kind of, there's a room they're trying to get into. And there's one guy that works in the room that they're squirting stuff into the coffee to make, I think, his tummy grumble. Maybe give him a little bit of a bathroom emergency. That's what ends up happening, essentially. Next thing you know, Ethan's just suction cupping his way through the vents. How'd he get in there? They pretended to be firefighters. Kind of worked out. When Mark was watching this with me, he's like, it just feels tedious. And I was like, yeah, it does. So he's suction cupping through the vents. it just takes them so long to do certain things. Like going through the vents felt like it took 10 years. Like, how much footage do we need of them climbing through vents? I don't think as much as we got. I think all the spy films I've seen over the years, none of this was exciting for me. And I've seen James Bond is technically a spy film. Like, I've seen spy films. This one was just like low key. Ethan gets lowered into the room. This is the big scene that everybody talks about. He's got his little harnesses on because in this specific room, the conditions are meant to set off alarms and bells and really alert people that this room cannot be tampered with and nobody can get into it. Like the floor, if anything gets on the floor, it can mess and set things off. So he's being lowered in from the ceiling. There's like a laser over the vent that they're going through. They have a little device that like stops the laser, which that was pretty cool. I'll give them that. They made it quiet. That was great for building a little bit of suspense and tension. It's just like there's no music. It's just him being lowered in. I feel like they were building these moments of tension and suspense, but I'm like, guys, just get to it. And I mean, I'm fine. I like having that time, getting that stuff stretched out, but the tension wasn't there for me. It just felt like, oh my gosh, like drop them on the ground, then there'd be some tension. Set off those alarm bells. I feel like I was seeing these important scenes from it that everybody knows about and that are like iconic. And I was wondering why they were so popular. What am I missing? Was it cool at the time because he had these wires hanging? Or had there not been a spy film like this? Or was Mission Impossible, the TV show, so big that this was like a beloved need for people to have, like the nostalgia of it? It is a cool sequence. When he's like getting close to the ground, his arms are like flailing so that he doesn't like hit his face on the ground. That was a bit goofy, but I get it because like that's believable. That felt believable. He's getting pulled back up. There's like this guy coming back in. Even though he's got tummy troubles, he's coming in. Ethan gets pulled up. Krieger, who's helping, his knife falls and lands on the table. It's a whole thing, right? But they end up getting the information they need from the computer. I thought for a second, like, why wouldn't they have cameras or CCTV in this room? But again, maybe they thought all the precautions they took to secure this room would have been enough. At this moment, too, this is something like I love Danny Elfman's music. I grew up with like Nightmare Before Christmas, you know the shebang, the Danny Elfman greatest hits. The music in this film felt silly. It just made me take it less seriously. It was more whimsical than I feel like the film should have had. Like the tone the music added felt that it cheapened it or made it like silly. It made it feel silly. It didn't give it that gravity and weight that I feel like a spy movie should have. Granted, the music is fine. Like it sounds good. I just feel like it added that Danny Elfman's whimsy. His music feels whimsical. And this felt like a film that shouldn't have whimsy built into it. There's also a lot of close-ups of faces and them like talking very close together. That was a choice. That was just something I noticed. So they figured out the knock list, and now there's still another half of the movie. And I just put in my notes, Ethan is so unlikable. He's so smug. And then I put, are there stakes? Like nothing feels like there's anything really going to happen. The stakes feel so low. Like they're just hanging out in hotel rooms, but I'm like, where's the danger? So then I said that, and then the news comes out about Ethan's family being like, they're being arrested for drugs, which I was like, okay, there's some stakes. Ethan's family is being punished because of Ethan being on the run. But I was also like, there's some stakes there, but they didn't introduce that until much later. Here's where there's a big old twist. Papa Voigt is back. Jim Phelps shows back up. We thought he died. We thought he got shot on the bridge and fell off the bridge and drowned, right? Nuh-uh. Papa Voigt has returned. He's like dying, quote unquote, from his injuries. And I'm like, shouldn't they be finding a doctor for him? But he's all, of course, like, no, I'm good. No, it's too risky. This is where Jim goes, Kittredge is the mole. Kittredge is an agent who Ethan was talking to at the beginning, saying that Ethan was the mole. So Kittredge is being blamed. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like, is this all set up? Or, should we believe Papa Voigt? But Ethan's too smart. He figures out that Papa Voigt, I literally wrote in my notes, Papa Voigt over and over again. Papa Voigt was the problem. That whole sequence where Ethan is figuring out what happened was so slow and so dramatic. This is the moment I realized I am not the target audience for this film. It's one of those films that's so stupidly complicated yet so simple at the same time. Ethan's unraveling this. Oh my God, not my mentor, Jim. and showing Jim is the big old mastermind behind why the mission went bad. Ethan's a little iffy on if Claire, the love interest, the wife of Papa Voigt, is in on it too, or if she's just collateral damage. But Ethan goes along with Papa Voigt being like, yeah, it's Kittredge, but in his mind's eye, we see him unraveling how he took out the team and that it is his fault. We also see that Krieger, the one who dropped the knife from the ceiling when they're getting the information they need from the CIA, was also potentially one of the accomplices with taking out his team, working with Jim Phelps. This movie is so slow. Claire was in on it. We find that out because they're on a train. They're doing this whole big thing trying to be like, Max is there getting the knock list. Kittredge is there. Claire's on the train. Papa Voigt's on the train. But Ethan's trying to figure out if Claire's in on it. Ethan somehow gets access to these masks. Where does he get these masks? Sitting on the train, Claire comes in and is like, quickly, we can figure this out and get out of here. And then Ethan pulls off the mask because Claire essentially admits to knowing everything. And then Papa Voigt comes out and there's this whole big confrontation between Ethan, Claire, and Jim. Jim shoots Claire, but also there's a real gross line that Jim says. Ethan's like, I didn't know if you were in on it or not, talking to Claire. And then Jim was all like, well, I was sure you wouldn't figure it out because I've tasted the goods, like kind of making Claire into a piece of meat. And I was like, ew, gross. And then Jim shoots Claire, which, OMG, what a loser. After he said that disgusting line. Oh, but that line literally made my skin crawl. So he shoots his beautiful wife that he's tasted the goods of and kind of put in danger's way, and she went along with him. But this was kind of goofy. Like, Jim's like, no one will ever catch me. No one knows I'm alive kind of thing. And Ethan pulls out the glasses, the spy glasses, and kind of records it. And then Kittredge knows and other people know that he's admitted to it and he's alive and people are going to be looking for him. The few things about this stuff is I didn't feel like the movie did a great job establishing a relationship between Ethan and Claire. It felt very superficial. It felt like their relationship didn't have any depth to it. I think they implied certain things, but it was so fast in certain areas that you just kind of went, I think they're just like close friends. And like, maybe if they've hooked up, it's because it's been a stressful situation, but they never showed them hooking up. So I just feel like I didn't really I don't know. I wasn't really sure how I was supposed to feel about that. Then we died. Like, the movie's not done. Like, we're not done. There's a whole helicopter thing. This helicopter sequence, my God, Krieger's in a helicopter. Jim's trying to get out of the train on top of a helicopter. And then Ethan's like, I gotta get him. And it's a very long scene. It was interesting, but there's a helicopter that goes through a tunnel. There's just a lot that happens. Ethan survives. Oh my God. When Jim spoiler alert, Jim gets crushed pretty badly by the helicopter. There was that, and then the head wrench elevator moment with Emilio Estevez, where I'm like, damn, there's some violent body crushing in this film that were just like flashes. And I'm like, damn, they really showed that. So people get their just desserts, right? But guys, I didn't like this movie. I didn't like this movie one bit. I couldn't wait for this movie to be over. I'm not angry you made me watch this. I'm disappointed. Mission Impossible was not for me. I don't think I'm going to continue with the series. I'm sure there's people out there that love it. I looked up why this film was so popular, and legitimately people are like, it stands for America and it's amazing. And it was just like very, very superficial descriptors of why this film is great. I need to do a bit of a deep dive to see if there is more things that I could touch into to see if I can figure out the basis. There was things that I saw too talking about how Ethan is such a great character because it just shows that he's so involved in this world that he can never have any deep relationships. I didn't get that from the first film. I also saw an article about why Mission Impossible is the perfect film. And I started reading it and I went, wow, I really disagree with a lot of this. So I should probably finish that article, but I was like, I can appreciate that this film is fun and special for certain people. Man, oh man, I don't think people need to watch this film. It's just it was tedious. It was a little bit tiresome. I really thought I was going to like this. It's a movie from the 90s. It's an action film. I was way too young when it came out. So I was like, man, Mission Impossible, this was huge in 96. I may have been on my Lion King era, But I'm at that age where I was like, I can be on the Mission Impossible era. I'm good. Don't come for me, Tom Cruise. It's not for me. It's not for me. So what am I going to give this film? Oh, I'm going to give this film a 3 out of 10 really slow spy sequences. Just really drawn out, slow, meandering spy sequences. I really did enjoy this movie. This is, I think, the first of this season where this was a hard one. This was a hard one to get through. But you know what? I've seen it. And now Katie has seen that. So let's do a little bit of trivia before we dive into comments from all of you. First, while filming the famous scene where Tom Cruise drops from the ceiling and hovers inches above the ground, Cruise's head kept hitting the floor until he got the idea to put coins in his shoes for balance. Probably also the arm flailing helped. The core strength, the arm flailing, which honestly, that would take a lot of core strength to do. So kudos to Cruise for that. I do wonder, was it quarters? Like, how much change did you put in there? I want to know how much change was in your shoes. The opening sequence gave away 7 plot points from this film. 7, which makes sense. There's a stabby in there. Like, when they were going through that opening credits sequence that felt like a TV show, I was like, damn, stop showing the movie. This isn't a trailer from 2024. I rant about this a lot. Movie trailers show way too much nowadays. It felt like that. It felt like they were showing me Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3 before we even got into the film. So that is interesting that someone counted there's 7 plot points from the film given away in that opening title sequence. Last but not least, wind machines blew gusts of up to 140 miles, 225 kilometers per hour into Tom Cruise and Jon Voight's face on top of the train. I believe that as I was watching that sequence. You know, when you see people parachuting or like skydiving, that's what I mean. Their faces get all like pushed back and like it seemed very much like that. Can you imagine being hit with 140 miles per hour of air? Believable. I appreciated the stunts. I appreciated what they did in this film in regards to special effects. I think this movie does deserve some accolades and credit for creating some pretty iconic moments and having some really impressive physicality in some of these stunts that they were doing. I just don't think the series or the movie was for me. So I don't know, maybe they get better. Does the series get better as it goes? Let me know. Also, let me know what you think about this film. Am I wrong? I know some of you will tell me that. And now we're going to dive into some comments from all of you, and be sure to let me know what you think about Mission Impossible and if you agree with me and what you would give it as a rating. It's comment time. All right, let's dive into comments from Thelma and Louise. I cannot wait to hear what you all have to say about Mission Impossible. This was an interesting episode. As I'm getting everything together for releasing this episode, I'm having flashbacks. So let's dive into some comments from Thelma and Louise, and I cannot wait to talk to you all about Mission Impossible. Don't forget to do your Katie Hasn't Seen That Season 3 bingo card, but let's jump into some comments. Up first from Twitter, A Tale Told shared, ushering in the new era of real movies for Katie Hasn't Seen That. Goodbye, 90-minute flicks. Hello, 2.5-hour movies. Hey, are you calling all the previous movies that are about an hour and a half not real movies? Interesting. But yeah, like this was it. Like, I don't know. Thelma and Louise is the exception to the rule for me. I actually really liked it. And it's shocking because I know a movie over 2 hours, that's a lot for me. But Thelma and Louise held me. So we'll see. I guess we'll see for the rest of the season what ends up happening. From YouTube, Francisco M7849 shared, Katie, I haven't realized that you were right. So far, every movie you reviewed, you've enjoyed this season. I am afraid of what will happen when we hit the wall with the one movie you did not like. Well, look at where we are. How serendipitous. Y'all, let me know what you think about Mission Impossible. I just don't get it. Up next, another comment from YouTube. White Flash 22 said, new episode hype. I feel like this actual movie has been lost over time. The ending is all that is still remembered culturally, which is a shame because this movie had some rock solid themes, observations, and performances. I liked it a lot more than I thought I would and recommend it for more than a Mimi driving off a cliff reference. Keep up the fantastic work. Hey, thanks, White Flash. I appreciate you. And then last but not least, a double feature from Rod Johnston 69, which everybody go listen to Rod's podcast too. It's called Murder Moose. It's about horror movies. And it's pretty great. I've been on it a couple times. Rod said, another culturally relevant movie that I've never seen, but the ending is something I've referenced more than once over the years. Great work as usual, Katie. Thanks, Rod. And then also, a nice way to end the episode, I think. Rod shared, doing crimes is bad. And I think we can all agree that that is the case. Thank you all so much for your comments on the Thelma and Louise episode, and I'll catch you all in the next one when we talk about Mission Impossible. If you want to hang out with me more, or if you just want to yell at me for my thoughts on a specific movie, I stream over on Twitch at www.twitch.tv/KatiePetersPlays. If you'd like to support the podcast and buy me a coffee to fuel my reviews, you can over on Ko-fi at www.ko-fi.com/KatiePetersPlays. You can join my Discord to discuss the movies I review with other Katie Hasn't Seen That fans by visiting discordapp.com/invite/KatiePetersPlays. If you enjoy Katie Hasn't Seen That, please leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. It helps others find the show. Also, feel free to follow and chat with me on Twitter at PlayKatiePlay and on Instagram and YouTube at KatiePetersPlays. Music written and performed by Mark Can Do It. Katie Hasn't Seen That is a part of the Geek Generation Network.